Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgia Catholic, with another Isaac Asimov short story. Now, you're looking at this magazine. It says Runner's World. Does that sound like a place for an Asimov story? But it's right here on the cover. It says Isaac Asimov, the super runner of the future. So, yes, he has a story in this page. We've done pages of this magazine, which at this particular time in October of 1982 has apparently been in print for 16 years at least, with such nice articles as the 8th annual shoe survey. What are the best shoes for running? Different kinds of running, different kinds of surfaces. High speed sprinting, lower speed marathons, intermediate speeds. Oh, story about people who are running here and there and racing and everything you never wanted to know about running, unless you are one of those, run, Forrest, run. This story, by the way, is a bona fide Asimov rarity. It has never been reprinted anywhere. It is not gathered in any of his collections, nor indeed has it surfaced, as far as anyone knows, in any other place whatsoever. The only place to find this story is the October 1982 issue of Runner's World. Well, let's take a look at this here. We have a little blurb here, and let's see what it has to say. Page 62, The Runner by Isaac Asimov. And I'll just read the little blurb here. It says, a peek at the roads of the future where runners don't run by hobby or by choice. Ooh. That doesn't sound very good. And before we talk about choice, it occurs to me that does the runner choose to or not? Well, let's take a look here. Now, we got some rather nice artwork here. Did the artwork? I'm not seeing it anywhere. No, it doesn't say. Well, there's a little blurb. Fiction. The Super Runner, one of America's premier science fiction writers, takes you on a flight of fantasy into the future. A journey to a world where runners are very special people. I don't think, if we talk about people who have difficulties as special people, that's a different kind of special. This is special in the sense that they command a peculiar respect. They're also highly specialized. If you are one of these professional runners, you are in fact genetically bred to be such. Now this comes with some really interesting artwork. I like the artwork. Let's take a look. Here inside the car is the boy and his father riding somewhere. And outside the window of the car, there's the runner. And one thing they seem to have done a lot of is they'll take a piece of this same drawing, enlarge it a little bit, and set it aside. There's part of the runner's body. As you can see, he's got some sort of pants, and he's got some sort of something over his top, very small. You don't see anything else, but there he is outside the window, running alongside the car. As it happens, he can run easily at least about 50 miles an hour. Not bad. But, as I said, he's been specially bred. His lungs are larger than usual. He has even grown nostrils on the sides of his, chest, abdomen cavity, so that his nose only breathes in through enlarged nostrils, I might add, and a different set of outbreathing nostrils are used there to exit. So the air is into his lungs and then gets breathed out without having to go back and forth and have areas where the air barely changes, reducing the ability to exchange the oxygen and carbon dioxide that you need to do. So he's really bred. Now, we have another set of artwork here. Here's our same runner. He is so fast, so powerful. He can just leap right over a car. So there's some sort of a car or whatever. He just jumps right over it. Look at this guy. Now look at his face. Look at the size of those nostrils. He does not have your normal size nose. And his rib cage, it's huge. His lungs can handle a tremendous, not only pass the air through, but they can handle a tremendous amount of air and keep his breath so that his body is oxygenated to a degree that will keep his body totally able to handle this run. We could just run all day. You would never have to stop unless he wants to pee or something. And again, you have a second picture that just enlarges part of the picture a little bit more, but just repeats it. Again, you can see those two black things. Those are his nostrils. His mouth and eyes look more or less normal. He's got a helmet of some sort. But large nostrils breathe the air. The runner moves silently, flying through the air, one long wave forward as he just goes. I bet one stride of his could probably take him 20 or 30 feet. We have another picture of the runner. Here it is, it's evening, and he's now getting through the city. By the way, he has a job. It's sort of like Pony Express. Your idea is to take some package here to there. That's his job. So this isn't done merely for some competition or whatever. This is his normal day-to-day life. He has a job running stuff from here to there to here to there because he can do real fast, and because he's running, it's not like a car or a bicycle that has to be put down somewhere or go on special roads and bike paths and blah, blah, blah. He's a runner. He can just go wherever and however. Now here he is. It's a night street. You can see he's got the package in his hand there. And once again, here's his face. Look at that face. Look at those nostrils. It's really wild. Looks like he could be a Dick Tracy villain or something with nostrils like that. Anyway, he doesn't wear much else. He's probably got really good shoes. And again, on the other side, you have a smaller part of the same picture again. So there he is running. And it says it was a huge rib cage, about twice as wide as the narrow, bare midriff. So, this is the running story. Now, since it's a rarity, although I want to kind of do something that, again, I reserve only for rare stories that really have not surfaced anywhere else, may very possibly, I would suspect, have copyright lapsed. Because, as I said, we want to keep the copyright of a story. The easy way to do it is to bind it into a volume, such as The Winds of Change. You see, you put it in there, and when you renew the copyright on this book, it picks up all the stories in the book, or at least as presented in the book, which could be just as good if you haven't modified the text. It gets a little more subject to legal interpretation if you have, but, well, anyway. So, if this story is still copywritten, it's after, I think, 29 years, or even if it was 39, 82, 92, okay, it's more than that from now. If it didn't get renewed, it is public domain. If it did, I apologize to the Asimov estate, and if they want this thing stricken, I will just have to make a new recording of this. So, I'm not going to read the whole thing, it's kind of long, but I'm going to capture some of the mood of this thing. So, Jimmy saw him first because they had passed some horses along the side of the road, and he had turned to watch them as the hovercar moved on. Cars are hovercars in this future. Okay. Well, that was believable. Hovercraft was this incoming thing. It was like this, it moves so easy and frictionless over any kind of surface. Hard roads, water, you name it. So, unfortunately, that did not catch on long term, and what few craft of that kind still exist are very limited and specialized now. I think they use them in swampy areas or something where You kind of want to be able to go over land and bog and water and whatever you got. But I think that's about it. They're hard to control. Okay, so hovercar moved on. He saw him coming up in the side lane, gaining on them. Dad, he said in sudden excitement, it's a runner. There's a runner going to pass us. Well, said Mr. Anderson. Wave to him, and when he passes. Oh, no, Dad, Jimmy urged. Speed up a little when he passes so I can talk to him. Not a good idea at all, son. We don't want to distract him. If he trips or falls over something, he can be killed. Jimmy watched avidly as the runner slowly approached. He had seen runners often on TV and sometimes in real life far away. This was the first time that one was going to pass him. He leaned out the hovercar window to watch. The hovercar rode along the asphalt without touching it, moving on air jets so silently you could hear nothing. The runner moved just as silently, flying through the air, one long leg out forward and slowly coming down. When it touched the ground, the muscles in his bare thigh bunched and sent him sailing into the air again, while the other long leg moved slowly and gracefully forward. Between ground contacts, the runner's body moved as high as the top of the hovercar, and Jimmy's eyes followed and studied it. Given the parabolic kind of motion when you go like that, and it's over something that looks about the height of a contemporary, maybe an SUV, not the taller SUV, but just kind of a normal SUV, or maybe like a pickup truck type height. You could probably see how long would it take to go up that high and down that back down. And if you're going about 50 miles an hour, one could probably calculate, I'm sorry I haven't done this, just how long an individual stride would be. I mean, he's going. He probably has his feet touched down very gently and with a minimal sound. Okay. Continuing. Between ground contacts, the runner's body moved as high as the top. Okay. As the top of the hovercar, and Jimmy's eyes followed and studied it. The runner wasn't wearing much. They never did. Running shoes, socks, and shorts, and a mini blouse that covered the rib cage. It was a huge rib cage, about twice as wide as the narrow, bare midriff and hips. And under that were those strong thighs and thin legs. Runners were always very tall and so top-heavy. You'd think they'd fall over. They're so top-heavy, he said aloud. They're not as top-heavy as they look, said Mr. Anderson. Those rib cages are mostly lungs and full of air, and the ribs are thin, and the thighs are heavy. They're no more top-heavy than you are. The runner was close now, and Jimmy expected him to be panting and sweating because, well, after all, ordinary people did, even when they weren't running nearly 50 miles an hour. But there was no sign of that. The runner's face seemed in perfect repose, and when Jimmy waved at him, he waved back. Jimmy shouted, "Hi, where are you going?" The runner said, "About 20 miles more, to Hendersonville." He didn't pant in the least. And then he did something Jimmy had not expected. He shortened his stride and kept even pace with the hovercar. "Where are you going, young man?" he asked genially. "To my grandmother's, but we're going to turn off at the restaurant up ahead for lunch first." "Are you? Now, that's a good idea. I've been thinking of having a bite, too." "You mean you'll come with us?" "There's no reason not to, if your dad doesn't mind." Mr. Anderson grinned and said, "Be my guest. But I warn you, sir, I have a curious son who will pester you with questions, if you would rather not be bothered." "It won't bother me. But I won't be your guest. I can eat a great deal, and the bill will be too high." Jimmy watched the runner's slow bobbing and said, "When we come to the turnoff, the car will move right, and you'll have to be careful, Mr. Runner. You can call me Dave, and don't worry about me. I know what to do at turnoffs." And he did. So, let's see. They get inside. And Mr. Anderson, "People will be stupid, but since the Supreme Court decision, I know are you ordinaries uncomfortable in the presence of a runner? I hope you don't mind." "Well, some people are stupid." "I know, then, that we're people. It does make it better now. 10 years ago, when I outgrew my apprenticeship and qualified as a master runner, there were only a few special places where we could eat, and that made it almost impossible to do our jobs, not at the rate we have to eat." Jimmy had watched the runner plow through 3 times the food his father had eaten, and he said, "Well, I'll say, Dave, Jimmy, said Mr. Ashton, mind your manners. No, he's right. Running consumes calories. I have to eat like this 4 times a day when I'm running. But at that, I use up far less energy than your hovercar does. It does make me a marked man, though. That and my shape. We stand out. And anything that's different makes people uncomfortable. All we specials run into that. We don't like it, but I think I can understand it. Many of us feel the same way about you ordinaries. The runner winked at Jimmy. Listen, Dave, said Jimmy. Don't you get to feeling tired when you run like that? Jimmy, said Father. The runner smiled. It's perfectly all right, sir. Why shouldn't he be curious? No, I don't, Jimmy. I don't until I get hungry. Then I have to stop to eat. That's like running out of gas. Don't you run out of air? Not really. See, my nose looks pretty much like yours except that it's big, right? It's sort of big, David, but it has to be. But watch. With that, Dave spread his nostrils, which widened into 2 great holes in his face. Ugly, isn't it? Wow, said Jimmy. It's very useful, even if it's ugly. You suck in a lot of oxygen that way, you see. And I have big lungs that can absorb it all quickly, and more red blood corpuscles than you have. And that's not all, either. When I'm not running, like now, I breathe in and out, as you do, and that means that lots of dead air stays in my lungs, as it does in yours. Because I can't breathe out all the carbon dioxide. Jimmy nodded. But when I'm running, I only inhale. The air goes out at the other end through special openings in my sides. May I, sir? He shows him these places. There's on each one side and the other side. So there's no dead air in my lungs. What's more, the air goes through tubes where it loses water and gains heat, so that the air comes out very dry and hot. Is that good? You bet. I don't want to have too much water or I'll have to stop and drink all the time. And that way I also lose most of the heat my muscles develop when I run, so that I don't have to perspire very much. Now, oh, you're lucky. I wish I were built like that. Don't feel like that. You're built differently, so you can do different things. Ordinary people can do all sorts of things, almost anything. In fact, specials can only do one thing well. Running is the only thing I do well. My children can't be anything but runners either, if I decide to have any, and that means I can marry only a woman who's a runner. It's too late for me. Won't genetic engineering work on me? Afraid not. Okay, let's see. I'll skip down a little bit more here. They apparently don't do much with races because they don't want somebody getting hurt because you're trying to go as fast as you can. Here we're going fast, realistically. But so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit more. By the way, apparently this is in the future where there are other kinds of specials. And there's a mention of another kind of special called a lifter. He's stocky, physical, kind of wide, not so tall, but he's really great at lifting very heavy things. I mean, he just walks up and picks it up. Could be useful, yeah. So they're at the door and stepped inside to allow a lifter to enter. Jimmy turned to watch the squat man with enormous muscles, but said nothing. So he said, the lifter looks strong, but I'd rather be you. The runner said, well, to each his own, you know, Jimmy. I'm afraid we're keeping you. Well, not really. I can make it with 15 minutes to spare without really extending myself. It's just I get restless when I've been quiet too long. I'm afraid this body I own wasn't made for quiet. So, do you ever regret what was, done to you with genetic engineering? Is this regret? Oh, good Lord, no! If you forgive me, and you'll understand, I don't mean this to offend you in any way. No, go ahead. Speak your mind freely. I feel a real pity for you ordinaries, and for any special other than a runner. No one but a runner will ever know what it feels like to glide along the ground, almost without effort, to run with the wind or against it, to feel the power inside you that makes you the most efficient thinking creature to move across the ground. It sounds almost egotistical, perhaps, but the power is all-encompassing. It is physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. It is experience that brings everything to the surface. I like this thing. If I extended myself to my limit, I could outrun an antelope. Of course, I can't match the birds, but sometimes when I leap, I can experience even the essence of their existence. When you run well, you leave behind the worst of things and become the best you can be. There is nothing like it, sir. Nothing you can know. Nothing you can imagine. It is unique. It is life at its peak. He waved his hand and was suddenly off, with 2 hops and then a powerful leap that carried him onto the highway right into the runner's strip. Oh, they have a special one. Just like we sometimes have bicycle lanes along with the cars lanes and sidewalks. Now they even have a runner's strip where the runners run and don't get interfered with by anybody else, at least other than like the intersections and so forth. So, Mr. Anderson watched him move, with longer and longer stretchings of his trim legs. So, I will say the end as one tiny suspense in case you can be ambitious enough to try to track the story down. There is a little bit at the end. Not too much. But you hear that song and dance and praise of just how great and glorious it is to be running with the wind in your hair and you're getting somewhere and it's just you and the ground and where you gotta go and maybe the scenery or whatever else you're running for. And you could just catch that. You could see that would be what appeal a story by Isaac Asimov would have to Runner's World. So, at any rate, the ending isn't all that relevant. It's just a mild little humorous chuckle if you ever track down the story. Gotta save a little bit of suspense. That's what I have on this. Thanks for listening.